Hi, I'm Billy Basso. Today I'm going to be showing you a game I've been working on called Animal Well.
If there's one thing you should know about the developer of Animal Well, it's that he's not afraid to have a little fun. Whether it's using unusual methods to advertise his game,
Billy, people are saying this is...
creating a series of ARG puzzles scattered across the internet for people to find,
There's a puzzle in this video.
or placing some extremely well-hidden secrets into the game itself, Billy Basso has never done things the traditional way, and Animal Well is certainly not a traditional puzzle platformer. So join me in uncovering what exactly it took over the past 7 years to go from this clunky little pixel adventure to what many are calling a masterpiece in Metroidvania design. Growing up, Billy had many interests: building, drawing, playing piano, and even yo-yoing. Later on in high school, he became interested in filmmaking and animation, as well as learned how to code. Eventually, he earned his bachelor's degree in video production and his master's in computer science. Through it all, though, he always remained fascinated by video games, later reflecting that all the scattered interests and hobbies I've pursued throughout my life were contributing to the skills necessary to release this game. His old videos, animations, and game prototypes all showed that Billy has always had a passion for creating, inventing his own new worlds, whether dramatic, goofy, or somewhere in the middle. And this interdisciplinary skill set would prove essential to seeing this project through to the end. As a kid, he didn't just get lost in his own worlds, he also became intimately familiar with spaces in the real world, mapping out his parents' entire house down to each closet and every shelf. One day he found a drawer he had never seen before under the countertop. Empty, but just the possibility of passing by something 1,000 times without ever knowing it was there caused his imagination to run wild. This very same idea shows up in Animal Well time and time again, with players becoming extremely familiar with its map as they unlock new areas and discover hidden shortcuts in the most surprising of places. Prior to diving into Animal Well development full-time, Billy was a software engineer at various studios like Phosphor Games, NetherRealm Studios, and Level X, where he learned that making a game, especially on your own, was no small feat. After seeing Indie Game the movie in 2012, he vowed that one day he would create a game from scratch, all by himself. But it would be another 5 years before Animal Well made its debut on his Twitter page. Billy has documented his interest in retro gaming and its hardware online, showing off his collection, creating scanline shaders to imitate the look of playing on a CRT, and citing Super Mario Bros. 2 and 3 as major inspirations. Another being survival horror games. Billy has cited Resident Evil as an inspiration, saying, "I wanted to take a lot of the things I've loved in other games, the game mechanics of survival horror games, but then take them out of the grimdark aesthetic that is always coupled with them. What those feelings and mechanics that you get out of those games are, and turn them into something different." If you've played the game, then you've probably run into a few bizarre, bewildering, or even scary encounters, but Animal Well certainly doesn't fit into the horror genre. It's also not a traditional Metroidvania. There's no combat, no double jump. Instead, the player is presented with some more out-of-the-box solutions to traverse and progress in this strange world. In 2017, he began working on the project, initially planning for it to be a short 1-hour game that would only take 6 months or so to finish. As we now know, it would eventually turn into something much greater than that.
What made you decide to tackle an entire game by yourself?
I don't know, I just thought it would be fun.
When beginning development on Animal Well, Billy chose to focus on simplicity first. He knew that he wanted to remain a one-person team, at least on the development side, so he chose to use a 320 by 180 pixel art canvas as a foundation and a way to limit the game's scope. Movement is simple: left, right, up, down, a single jump, and a handful of items the player would gradually uncover one by one. There is a very limited amount of text and instruction, and the best way to survive is simply by observing your surroundings. Perhaps not so simple, though, is creating an entire game engine from scratch. But doing so put Billy in complete control over everything and saved him the headache of having to deal with a third party in his creative process. He also genuinely enjoys building his own systems from the ground up and understanding the ins and outs of whatever project he's working on, having the freedom to create and iterate as he'd like. Billy recalls having toy game engines to tinker with in his spare time while working at other studios, and this is where Animal Well began to take shape. It was this freedom to experiment without limitations that formed the game, both graphically and mechanically, into something that looks and feels different than any other pixel game that's ever been released. Billy never was aiming to recreate the look of the pixel games of the past. His goal was always to experiment and improve, using the limitations of this style to push past boundaries and explore new styles. As for the game's themes and the mood it's trying to invoke, he wanted players to feel out of place. The world exists for the benefit of the many creatures that live in it, whether they be dogs, mice, kangaroos, capybaras, or chinchillas. It's not that you're not welcome there, it's just that they were here first. Some of the animals can be quite friendly and others hostile. None of them are your enemies, and none of them are your friends. Billy wanted to play with the idea of turning the familiar into the unfamiliar, flipping players' expectations on their heads and constantly surprising them. For example, the dogs in the game will chase after players, but they can't seem to fit through these tunnels, which provide a quick and easy escape. Then the player is presented with the dachshund, which, to their surprise most likely, will follow them underground, stripping away that sense of safety they once felt. The ghost dog takes this another step further and follows the player from screen to screen, giving them no place to rest until they put the correct pieces together to solve this puzzle. In non-linear Metroidvania-style games, the abundance of choices presented to the player, deciding which room to enter next, or keeping track of items and keys, can be overwhelming. Billy was careful to limit the amount of these decisions while still keeping the game world open-ended, even making it possible for more experienced players to progress while newer ones might still need to find a certain item to get by. For more challenging puzzles, the player is always left with other paths to explore in the meantime so they don't get stuck and give up completely. In fact, the main map is roughly a 16 by 16 grid, 256 rooms, and Billy estimates that he created around 500 that were either cut completely or altered beyond recognition. The game's map is extremely important, small yet dense, which allows for deeper secrets to potentially be hidden right under one's nose, something they've walked past 1,000 times but have never noticed. This is where the importance of Animal Well's layers comes in.
Designing Animal Well is a layered experience. So what that means is the base layer is something the average person can play through and enjoy to completion.
When making a game, it's important to keep your target audience in mind. Animal Well has 3 different audiences, each potentially interested in exploring deeper and deeper parts of the game. On the surface level, Billy wanted the game to be broadly accessible and fun, something that felt satisfying to play and that some might choose to put down after reaching the end, being able to leave feeling content with the whole experience. These people may not be interested in devoting hours of their time to certain puzzles and just want to have a fun time through to the end. And in order to add all the secrets and layers on top, there had to be a solid foundation to build them into in the first place. Part of what makes even the most surface level gameplay of Animal Well feel so unique are the tools themselves. Keeping controls simple has allowed all the spotlight to be aimed at these seemingly basic toys and gadgets, and there are no blatantly obvious tutorials in the game. Instead of immediately telling players what they're supposed to do, Billy lets them just discover it through experimentation. Most of the time, this doesn't take them any longer than an explicit tutorial would, and it makes them feel way smarter and more present in the world.
But then there's a second layer, which for most games you would consider this part like 100%ing the game. There are lots of hidden items in nooks and crannies throughout the world. They're not obvious, and you might need some help to find these.
It's largely agreed upon by the game's community that this second layer is finding all 64 eggs hidden throughout the well. This is where revisiting areas with new tools and new knowledge of the game comes into play and will more often than not lead to a reward. In order to encourage this type of backtracking, Animal Well has a locked camera that allows for more careful examination of the whole screen, even the blank spaces behind walls and other seemingly impossible to get to places. These types of secrets are optional, as Billy knew certain players would find the pixel hunting portions of the game to be tiresome and tedious.
The third layer has puzzles that don't really present themselves as puzzles. They might go unnoticed for years, potentially, or they might require some community collaboration to solve.
Although most of this third layer of secrets has been uncovered by now, one way or another, the Animal Well community has been having a blast scouring every corner of the map for secrets hidden within secrets, coming up with oftentimes far-fetched sounding theories about the relationships between different rooms, items, and decorations. Designing a game for all three types of players was certainly no easy task, and conveying to people just how all the layers would connect was an important first step in marketing the experience. They say never to challenge the internet, since you'll always lose. These wise words were written by Billy Basso himself in 2022 after Animal Well's very first ARG. In early 2022, he and his business partner, Dan Edelman, began discussing ways to market the game without including too many spoilers, since, after all, Animal Well is first and foremost about the spirit of discovery. How could they help potential players become familiar with this idea before being able to play it for themselves? They decided to create a series of ARG puzzles, or alternate reality games, that stretched across the internet. In a way, these ARGs, which ranged from visiting a website displayed on Billy's monitor, decrypting ciphers, and searching through file metadata, act as an additional pre-release layer to the game. There were a few different ARGs hidden in trailers and blog posts, with the most recent one appearing in this curious video on the BIGMODE YouTube channel, which eventually revealed Animal Well's final release date of May 9th. These puzzles laid the foundations of the game's community over on Discord, with Dan noting that through them we found our community soulmates, people who loved looking for clues and solving really obtuse puzzles. By late 2022, progress on both Animal Well's development and marketing efforts was moving along at full speed. Billy quit his day job to work on the game full-time and announced that he'd be releasing the game on PS5 in addition to PC. Then, the community that had been slowly building up its numbers over the years saw an explosion in members when Billy and Dan announced their partnership with BIGMODE.
Today, I got a big big announcement for you. Me and Leah have been hard at work for a while now, getting all this set up, and now we're finally ready to tell you about it. Introducing my new indie game publishing company, BIGMODE. Mode.
On September 21st, 2022, Jason Gastro, also known as Video Game Donkey, announced that he and his wife Leah would be working under the name BIGMODE to find, fund, and publish games made with substance, quality, creativity, and fun in mind. Before this announcement, the two were already making connections, trying to find a title that would be a good fit for the company, something that would stand out in the sea of indie releases and cement BIGMODE as a serious new publisher in the industry. Dan noticed that Leah was already following Animal Well on Twitter, and they got to talking. Even though Billy and Dan were planning on self-publishing, the allure and excitement surrounding BIGMODE was too big an opportunity to pass up. In a blog post on Animal Well's website, Dan talked more about their relationship and how each party brings something valuable to the table. At first, Billy's sole weakness was familiarity with how to bring a game to market, a weakness I came in to help out with. My biggest weakness is that I can't really reach players directly. I'm always borrowing someone else's megaphone. Donkey has earned an audience who respects his opinion and trusts his integrity. So on January 8th, 2023, when BIGMODE announced their partnership, all that was left to do was make one final push towards the finish line. They had the game, they had the industry knowledge, and now they had all eyes on them.
So, I've played Animal Well for a decent amount of time already.
It's hard writing a review for a game that's really, really special.
So I've been playing Animal Well non-stop this week.
This game is an obvious masterpiece of the indie Metroidvania genre.
And the first game I want to talk about today is Animal Well.
Thursday, May 9th, 2024. The reviews were in, and most of them couldn't have given Animal Well any better of a score if they tried. At this point, the secret hunt was on. The game's Discord server was being flooded with new members, all of them wanting to know what exactly the game had to offer and how deep the rabbit hole went. On day one, Animal Well reached over 800 reviews, and after 1 month it still sits at overwhelmingly positive with almost 10,000 reviews. There's no doubt that it had an extremely successful launch. But among all the chaos and chatter, one person was staying very quiet.
I want the community to kind of like develop their own canon of like what everything's called, and I'm leaving that like as a blank slate kind of intentionally.
Billy would later confirm that the player character is a Mexican jumping bean, but he has remained very aloof otherwise, not wanting to give away any information on the game's lore or secrets. Over the past month, the game has gotten a few small patches, but it released in a near-perfect state, 100% content complete with no plans for future add-ons or DLC. With most of the game's bigger secrets now solved, the most dedicated players in the Animal Well community are hungry for more, searching every suspicious pixel and odd tile for something. Some new discovery or gameplay breakthrough that'll lead them off on another adventure into the unknown. After all, not every secret in the game has been found yet. Animal Well has inspired countless talented artists to create their own fan art and brought together thousands of people from around the world, uniting them in an exciting series of mysteries, leaving most with more questions than they had going into the experience. I know this is a documentary and it's supposed to be objective, but we're at the end, so I'll just say it. Animal Well is my favorite game of all time. I knew this would be the case after playing for just a few hours, and it's still true upon completion. To Billy and everyone else I mentioned in the video, I hope you're proud of what you've accomplished, and I hope you all take a very well-deserved break.
I don't really know what my life is going to be like when this game is out, because it's like such a constant background factor to work on it every day. So yeah, it's very surreal.
Thank you for sticking around to the end or skipping through to the end of this video. Over the past 2 years, my thing here on YouTube has been making pretty short videos with minimal editing, usually just some trailers or maybe gameplay footage, but this time I wanted to try something new, since Animal Well is a very special game to me and because you all seem to have enjoyed my other videos on the game. But I do usually talk about other indie games on here, making previews, list videos, and reviews on games with all sorts of styles spanning a bunch of genres. Maybe I'll make another documentary one day, we'll see. But if you enjoyed what you saw here, I'd ask that you'd at least consider subscribing and leave a comment about your experience with Animal Well. I'd love to hear it. To those of you who were already following me, I do have a Patreon page if you're interested in that sort of thing. I put out a weekly newsletter going over indie game news and new releases so that you can stay in the loop without having to search all over the place for information and articles. And that's all I got. I think I'm going to take a bit of an Animal Well break now, but I will be covering all sorts of other cool games because I love doing this so much. Thanks for watching.